other duties as required.
That's right.
Peter, you're aware the microphone is now on the ceiling?
I am aware. It's like hot mic'd everywhere. Yes.
Yes. So everyone's aware. Everything else set?
Yep. You're going, yes.
All right. Welcome to this meeting of the Municipal Building Blue Ribbon Committee. I'll start with a roll call. Go around the room. Mr. Shellman.
Rick Chelman here.
Mary McElwain here.
Peter Weeks here.
Ken Horak.
John O'Leary.
Mark Newport.
Kate Coyle. Commissioner Coyle.
Peter Rice.
Right. And I am Councilor Kate Cook. Councilor Tabor couldn't join us today, but we'll watch the meeting. And the first thing on our agenda is to review the minutes from the May 14th meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to see the minutes?
Jim, I have a question, and I appreciate the June 25th meeting, if my request changed to the 18th.
Yes.
But later on in the minutes, it says it's replacing the June 11th meeting. I don't think we canceled the June 11th meeting.
Yes, I think there was a little bit of confusion, and we can correct that because the June 11th meeting, my understanding, is still on the schedule.
On the schedule.
Yes.
So in June, we'll meet the 11th and the 18th. And the 11th hasn't been canceled.
Correct. And if we find that on the 11th, we don't have something immediately to address the 18th, then we'll do the next meeting, that July meeting.
I think we've got a lot to discuss. And
I do too. I do too.
I hate to see meetings canceled.
Me too. And I'm hoping we have the report to share at that point, and that we have time then to review it. If we do have the report, it probably will take us a few meetings at a minimum to review it. So
The staffing report.
yes, exactly. The first part, it's that first phase of the report. Okay, so, but we don't have it yet, and when we do receive it, I'll make sure it's circulated to the committee.
I would vote acceptance of the meeting as amended.
Just for clarification, the study was gonna be one study, so there wasn't gonna be two separate report backs.
Okay.
So at this point, I mean, we talked to him today just to confirm that was not gonna be the case, and said, no, that was, the original scope would be one.
Okay. Okay.
So the June, which would include future staffing as well as space needs.
Okay.
So that, it may not be able to meet the 11th, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Do you think it will meet the 18th?
I would hope so. I mean, they had originally anticipated being able to get it all done by the end of May. So, which, for consultant speak, that usually means,
Right, yes.
So
Mary.
when you're referring to the study, you're not talking matrix, you're talking about the design group?
No, we're talking about the matrix study.
Okay.
Matrix study.
That was presented to us
Okay,
last
so I just wanted to clarify that because the RFP is out for the design group. Am I right on that?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify the terminology when you talk about the study.
Yep.
So that we know
Right.
what you're referring to.
This is specifically the staffing needs study.
Yeah.
Yes.
My understanding is that the city council has the draft staffing needs study.
I haven't seen
We
the draft.
presented it,
But it
when
was
you saw it
We
online,
just saw the
online, and
presentation
was
that was
posted.
presented here.
spoken to other city councilors who represented that they all received a copy. You haven't seen a copy of
I have not received a copy, so it would be unusual if
Well,
others had.
But there was a presentation with respect to, that was generated from that draft.
Correct, and
Correct,
so
here.
so the representation may have been that since it was presented and it was recorded and online, they have the ability to
Okay.
copy that.
Okay, right. We just have the presentation so far.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it being distributed.
No, I asked yesterday, because I was hoping that we would be close and that we would have something for the committee, but we're not.
I
Is it
will confirm
possible-
that and report back if that's a mistake. I'm not aware,
I
but I will
mean,
check.
maybe I misunderstood. I mean, but is there any reason not to circulate the existing draft?
Everybody should have the presentation slides. Those
I think
are available. Those were sent around, I thought, to the
The
committee.
matrix,
So,
we had it for the last meeting.
exactly. So that's all we have. We didn't get anything additional.
Nothing
I
beyond
think
the
that's what she's
presentation.
talking about.
Right,
Yeah, we didn't.
so everybody has access to that,
Yes,
which the, conclusions drawn from, or the recommendations.
We don't all agree that the recommendations are the same, so.
No, but what she's stating is the draft was brought up to what their feelings are, where the police department should be as of today, staffing level wise.
right, we received general recommendations, but we didn't receive any of the analysis. So that's what, I think that's what everybody's waiting to see, is the,
In other words,
The
there were
deeper
no
report.
recommendations about space needs or future staffing levels or future space
Correct.
needs.
right.
Right, it's a three-part analysis. One is current staffing needs, the next is future staffing needs, and then space needs.
Current and future.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the minutes do, I think, a reasonable job reflecting kind of the report that we received.
I would agree.
There was a motion, I'll second it.
You'll second, okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Is there any more discussion?
On the minutes
Meeting or the
specifically?
minutes? Yeah,
None for me.
Not from me.
all right, all in favor of approving the minutes
Aye.
as amended?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. Today, we specifically were asked to go back and discuss the tours we received. And this is really in preparation to finish up kind of that work in preparation for looking at the full needs study. So I think we should start with, do them in order. And so we're gonna start with the municipal tour of the Portsmouth facility and reflections on that tour first. So I'm gonna open the floor to whoever has comments or has specific topics that they wanna discuss specifically around that, the municipal tour here in the Portsmouth facility.
I think, what I learned from the tour, there are a lot of spaces that could be reconfigured in the current municipal building to alleviate space for police use. There are, and I brought up since the beginning, I do think we should have the school department involved because they have a lot of the space in the building, and is there other places they could go rather than here at City Hall? To my knowledge, nobody has talked to them yet, even though it's certainly on the street that they may not always be here. I mean, they have a big boardroom on the first floor. One of the charges that the mayor made, and I think we lose sight of those charges in a lot of our discussions, is to have the public needs closer to the front door, that being city clerk, assessor, tax collector, and then you have that wing that could be used by the police department, and right off what they now have, so. I think there's a lot that needs to be done. I believe Peter Rice, when he says there are deficiencies in the current building that need to be addressed, and I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to redefine those and see how it's going to work, putting everybody together. But I would hope that we don't cancel any further meetings because we have a charge and we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Yeah, I agree with Peter, and the fact is that there are spaces that probably could be better utilized in this and especially on the municipal side, and, I think that's where he was going with that. It's kind of interesting, and the fact is that whatever you want to call it, the lobby into the council chambers is basically a fairly good sized piece of, area, and really has no utilization except for people taking a break from a council meeting. I mean, that's really it. And then also the opportunity we had to go down to the far end of the building where HR is, certainly that space can be better configured. One of the concerns I do have, though, is that when you deal with a project like this, you deal with a couple of multiple issues that impact the whole thing. I mean, it's, and again, I don't mean to, it's easy to say, well, we could take the school department and there's room available other places. At the end of the day, someone's gonna have to pay for that.
Yes.
And I think that, if any entity within this building moves, there are costs associated with it. And unless things change, we do have a limited budget that we're working with. So before we, talk about what should be done, we need to understand what the financial impact of those things are. And that's part of the whole process, bringing on the other firm to look at all of those types of things. Because frankly, we've got things that need to be done and things that should be done and things that are nice to do. And we kind of have to think about where everything falls into and make sure that we have the resources to do what needs to be done and probably what should be done and maybe some of the nice to do's. So I think that that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that, those of us who've been involved with the police station portion of it, we know that new construction, if there is new construction, is expensive. And one of the problems we're dealing with is as time goes by, money doesn't get you don't get as good a bang for your buck as you did 2 years ago. And as we keep going on, that $42 million can be frankly eaten up and increased costs. So those are the things that I'm concerned about, is that let's figure out what we need to do, what we should do, and what it would be nice to do. So,
I agree with most of what Mr. Weeks and Mr. O'Leary have just said. I'd like to just add a few specific observations that I think we should be reminiscent of, not unlike what you were alluding to, John. The idea that we have tiles in this building that still have asbestos in them is not great. And there are certain things that, to your point about hierarchies of needs, we should really be mindful of the fact that we live in a city that has the great benefit of having a tremendous municipal workforce in our fire department, in our police department, and in all of our various other municipal departments. And so providing a safe, healthy, and comfortable place for them to work, maybe not restorative, but comfortable, is something we should aim to do as citizens of this community, as taxpayers, as members of this committee. And so, to me, the staffing needs assessment combined with a full understanding, as we've talked about in the past, Peter, of how many square feet are we working with here? What do we need in total square feet for all of the departments, including the police department? And then where is the gap? How much of a gap is there? And then that informs all sorts of things that we can work with architectural firms and others on as to what makes sense. I think from my perspective, those are the inputs we need, and we're getting very close to having them. Once those things are unblocked, this committee's ability to productively work towards a fruitful conclusion is, I think, more unblocked than it is right now. And it's unfortunate that we're waiting for the study. It's unfortunate that the study isn't done until the first half of the year. It is what it is. We can sit here and debate about whether or not canceling meetings is a good idea. We are where we are. Let's not relitigate all of that. Let's be mindful of the fact that we have many of the things that we need to know are going to be falling into place in the coming weeks, and that will inform a whole series of other conversations about where we go from here.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheldon?
I went back and looked at our charge earlier today, which I think we might all want to do. I'm not gonna read it because you can all check it out, but some of what Cameron just said is straight out of what we're supposed to be doing for safe and comfortable space. And it's really, the way I read it, we're to look at this building complex and make recommendations to City Council on how best to use it. One thing I learned from the tour of this building and the recent study is the police department is doing an amazing job for what they've got, because that's the most inefficient space I can possibly imagine. And you guys got very high marks, so I think we shouldn't punish the police department for doing that. Good job. That said, what it also says is if it was organized more efficiently, you could probably do an even better job. So how do we balance that out? And I think that's a key question. To Peter's point about the school, and this sort of came up, this committee can't implement anything. We can only make a recommendation. And in walking, just during the tour, from having looked at buildings for clients over the years, it's very inefficient. You know, there's definitely space that can be used all over the place because it's an adapted building. You know, the building was built for a different purpose. So, and it's been used sort of on a piecemeal basis without a comprehensive master plan, if you will, for how it can be used. I think there's little doubt it can be better used. And I think our first charge is what can we do inside the shell of the existing structure. And if something doesn't fit, to Cameron's point and to John's point, then maybe we need to say, maybe we're looking at the need for an addition or an expansion or something like that, because you just can't do this function in this structure. And that may be a security issue, you know, we've talked about some of that. But I think it's important to keep in mind what we're supposed to do, and that's to come up with a recommendation to council. I don't know that we have to get real specific in terms of money. I mean, I'm an engineer and I'm cognizant of cost, and but I think our recommendation is more a holistic one, being mindful of costs. You know, we shouldn't say, let's make all the ceilings 5 feet higher. You know, that'd be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? Well, that would only cost more money than we could possibly spend, just to use a crazy example. So that's what I learned from it. Now, I'd be interested to hear from you, because I was in court the day of the Dover tour and I've discussed this with the chief. I'm happy to go up to Dover and look at that facility if you think it would help inform my education going forward. I was up in Grafton County, no way I could make it back. So that's just a side note, a personal note, if you guys think that was helpful to you, or if it was just a fun trip to Dover.
I found it very informative, and I think that, you know, for me, one of the things, and I know, Chief, you've probably heard this more than just about anyone, but the kind of lessons learned around, if we had known this at the time, we might have done this differently, because we didn't know what we didn't know about what we might need or want. And once you lay a foundation and put up walls and beams and shit, it's a lot harder to fix it after than if you plan it that way in advance. So to me, hearing the reflections of people who spend hours and hours in that space every day, every week of every year was helpful.
And also to the, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Please, you raise your hand.
Well, I just think it's important that we look at this for the long term. We're not talking about a 5-year, 10-year, 15. We're really talking about 30, 40, 50 years to plan this out. And it originally started with the police department. So to me, I know we're looking at the whole building, but the police department is our focus, because in my opinion, they have 2 floors that are really greatly in need of refurbishing, redoing, emptying out, something. And I didn't see that with the rest of the municipal building. I felt that there was good space. A lot of improvements have been made in the other section of the municipal building. You know, remember the years when the gather was down at the end of the hall. It was a mess down there. So a lot of work has been done down there, and a lot of structural work still needs to be done in order to make it workable for everybody. So I'm looking at, yes, the whole picture, I don't think that the police department has as much space as the rest of the building to work with that. When I look at what's, especially down in the basement and the second floor, it's a maze. So,
And just
work
to
to do.
connect both Cameron and Mary Lou, your points of looking towards the future, it's like one thing Dover has informed us is they're running out of space already. And so when you talk about what we're gonna build for the future, and when you look at like the growth of the city with respect to all these new housing units and things that we're all seeing go up right before our eyes, it would be, I think, unfortunate and sort of irresponsible on our parts to some extent to construct a facility that is good in the now, but not going to provide our needs in 50 years. And then, and sort of that would be mimicking some of what Dover experienced. So I think Cameron, your point is well stated in terms of what you should have done.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of distinctions between Dover and Portsmouth in terms of population density and where building can occur. Dover has a lot more land than we do to develop, so the growth in 50 years in Portsmouth proper is probably muted compared to what we'll see in Dover, but that's kind of a deeper conversation that we might need to have right now. Yeah. And we should leave that to the consultants, frankly, to tell us what they think the population growth is going to be. That's their job.
I want to go back for a second to the review of this building. There's no question in my mind that work needs to be done. I guess I'm going to call it the morgue level of the station. I think there are things that can be done and rearranged there. I happened to one day talk to Joe Almeida. In areas that they don't have any windows, can we get some windows to the outside by berming, and at least getting some outside light in? I did not go to the Dover tour, and I didn't go on purpose because I didn't find that as my charge was from the mayor, and it didn't seem to me that touring that is going to do anything. I'm happy to listen to some of the reports of what the space deficiencies are here, but trying to copy somebody else's is not what I think is best. We need to make some changes, and whether it's a 10,000 square foot addition to be able to get us up to what we need, be that as it may. But we have to, not that we're going to set a cost, but we're going to have estimates of whatever we recommend what it's going to cost. We know, to be realistic, there are not 6 votes on the city council right now for $42 million for a bond issue. Now, if in fact you go to making other improvements in the building, can we convince that that is the time to do that in improving the police department and improving this building? And, I think that should be our goal. Safety should come first, convenience to the public, and adequate space for operations. So I'm looking to, when we have the architectural firm on board, of what their thoughts are of what we need and what can we do in this building and what type of an addition and where should it be done.
Or
If,
Yeah.
I'll share my reflections on this building. One of the things that's really glaringly obvious to me, and I've toured now the police facility, I'm going to say 3-4 times at this point, is that the lab space is grossly inadequate for our operations. Between the lab space and the space where we look at evidence and we store evidence, it is clear that is not adequate for modern policing operation by any means. And it's in one of those spaces of the building that is more difficult right now, as far as kind of navigating back to that space. So that's clear. It's also clear that navigation through the building isn't ideal because of the way it was set up and because of where hallways have been placed and where there are support pillars probably in the structure. And that's, so I'm really interested in hearing back from an architectural firm. That to me is really critical because we can talk about this space and frankly, square footage isn't the problem, it's arrangement. And because there's quite a bit of square footage, it's just the way it's laid out makes it very, very challenging to navigate and to utilize appropriately. So hearing from an architectural firm about how some of those challenges could be resolved would be incredibly helpful. Also, what's clear to me in touring the building is the entire building has the same challenges around the HVAC system.
That's true.
And that is going to remain an ongoing challenge for this building until we upgrade that system and repair that system. That not only includes those upgrades that should help with the spaces where we have continuing maintenance challenges, but it also should address some of the windows that we have that are inadequate. So we have spaces in the building where we have that are not necessarily in the police area that are up, I believe, on the third floor and fourth floor, that are very substandard at this stage for windows. So putting in a new HVAC system without considering some of those other maintenance needs, I think isn't the best path either. So we do have some maintenance that we need to address. And I think that our Department of Public Works and our head team has done just a fantastic job, like phasing that out so that the capital costs don't hit us all at once. But when we're talking about a potential of redoing this building, we have to be talking about those things that kind of are must do to make it the airspace inside the building clean, safe, functional for everyone, so we don't have any ongoing maintenance issues. That's the goal, so we can reduce ongoing maintenance. If we reduce ongoing maintenance, we can reduce costs, and then it makes it easier to put in those capital investments. So if we can say we replace windows and HVAC and we're saving ourselves X amount per year, we can invest more in those capital improvements. So that's what I see when I walk around the building is, yes, there are definitely some things we can do. I think an architectural firm will be incredibly helpful. And I don't think that the city hall space is organized well. When I came in today, I mean, this is just like kind of the common challenge we have. There was a woman with a newborn infant in a stroller who couldn't figure out how to use the elevator. Now there are instructions for the elevator. We have an elevator in front, but because of the arrangement, there's no one nearby to ask. And so we do have some challenges about access for residents. And kind of the most important thing this building does is it serves as a place for residents to handle all of their city business. So I looked, when we did the tour, I just kept thinking repeatedly about that space needs study that was done in 2014, is that right?
Yes.
2014, that came back with recommendations that this committee has, recommendations for a central center at the front of the building. And so I think this is a nice segue because it leads us into kind of what Dover did, which is they created this in their municipal building, one space for handling all of your city business, where you go into one space in their municipal facility. So since I think everybody's shared their reflections, I think we can transition to that and talk a little bit about that as well.
Just briefly before we transition, I do want to just call out, because I think you hit on something important. In thinking about the next 40 or 50 years and not the next 5 or 10, things like the deferred maintenance around some of the utilities in this building, plumbing and electrical, and other things like the asbestos tiles on floor 4, we should be focusing, I think, in this committee on how do we remediate those situations so that for the next 40 or 50 years, Peter's department can be more efficient and more effective, and all the employees here have better facilities to working.
And one other thing before we transition, the architectural input is going to be important, but to harken back to one of our first meetings, we shouldn't be blindly listening to whatever an architect says based on, we have to give the architects guidance. So I don't know what guidance they will have given before we see the report, but we need to be cognizant of that.
Thank you.
That was my question too. We have the report from the Valley Benziger and the Architects Design Group. We have Matrix that's coming to us, and I'm wondering what the proposal, how it was written, the RFP, so that do we know what to expect from this design group? And how do we?
You can go online.
And how do we coordinate this information for this committee? Because there's a lot of information that we could use, but we don't know what to do with it. Excuse me. Go ahead, Peter.
Madam Chair, if I could speak.
Go ahead.
The RFP is online, so you can see exactly what was asked for. The part of their scope of work is to have meetings with you all, as well as other stakeholders. I hear a lot of impatience, like to want to get going. This is a marathon. Projects like this take a long time. You know, Chairman Chalman knows this from his life experience. I appreciate everybody wanting to get, but it's going to take a little time to get the architects up to speed. It's going to take a little time for them to prepare alternatives for you to review and to get input from you all and other stakeholders. So I would just encourage you to, be patient. We understand the priorities. This is not going to be done in a vacuum. This is not going to be done and then handed to people. This is an iterative process, and it's going to be a good process, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I get that. I was just talking about coordinating the information that we have with information that's going to come to us, and how do we work with all of that information using the purpose that came to us from the mayor and the city council.
Is that RFP on the municipal building committee's link?
If not, we can move it to it. It's on this purchasing.
Interesting, yeah.
It's on the
Purchasing.
purchasing page of the city's website.
Yes, but we can make sure.
We can get it on. We can move it over.
Mr. O'Leary?
Yeah, a couple of quick things, if I can just pick up on what, Peter, I believe you had your meetings with the firms, and I don't want you to get, how did they go?
They went well.
Good.
We as a group internally need to confirm and when we want to sit down and negotiate a scope and budget. So it's, those types of things, you don't just say, yes, you go, you got to sit down and say, okay, this is what they're saying it's going to cost. How do we get to the point where we feel, they're going to provide the level of service? One of our big, concerns and what we always, and not about this firm, but what we want to make sure is the public outreach and the public involvement is really critical, because, we want to move this project forward. We don't want to go forward and then have it fall apart because they didn't communicate it well. So
We learned.
that's a big part of the selection process.
Were any of the firms local, Peter?
Yes, a number of them.
Several.
Thank you,
So,
that's fine, that's more than I wanted, thank you.
when we find out, we will make sure that the committee knows as soon as we affirm is selected too, so that everyone is aware. So we'll keep you informed. I'm not gonna not tell you something as soon as we know about it, so we will make sure the committee knows. And we will make sure that they meet with the committee to get input as soon as we get them kind of up to speed on where we are.
When do you expect the contract to be signed, Peter?
Optimistically, it's going to take a few weeks. We haven't started that process yet. So, again, it's one of those things where you can rush into something and and have it, backfire on you. So we're also going to stage this contract. So we're not going to give them all one big, here's the whole value of a design. We're going to say, okay, you get the first portion of this chunk. And when, we successfully complete that and we feel that everybody's satisfied with them, we will then give them the next tranche of money to take the next step. So it's going to be an iterative process.
So is the firm that you're available What's their workload?
All represent that they are available.
Right. So this is one of the challenges, you know, and everybody that there's nothing more frustrating than working through a process that involves an RFP and a consultant, and you know, I've been through this now. Unfortunately, a few times in the last year, that things took an extra 6, 7, 8 months beyond our deadline. Unfortunately, there are just so many firms, and they work for municipalities all over the country and other organizations, and we don't want to necessarily compromise so that we can get a product quickly. We want to get the right product so we're not wasting taxpayer dollars.
There's one thing I just have to bring to this group's attention based on what the planning board and the council, you know, in terms of authorization, we're just beginning the master plan update. And we'll have to see where it leads. The contract has been signed in that case. We are starting with the consultants. But the comment about Dover having more land is true, but it is quite likely that Portsmouth can be seeing a significant population increase through densification, depending on how the master plan recommendations come through and what the council ends up doing with changes to zoning. There are areas of the city that I think, well, I know professionally could be densified quite easily, and we're seeing some of that. So don't think, you know, we're at stasis at whatever the population is now. These gentlemen in the blue uniforms are going to get busier and busier, I think, because people generate police work, and there'll be more people.
It's a strain on all city resources, and so that's the thing that we always have to think about. And unfortunately, so far as we've built, we haven't had the kind of population increase that we would anticipate. So far with new construction, maybe with a different mix of new construction, we'll have those increases that
There's a lot
frankly we would
underway right now.
we would like to see. You know, more kids in the schools. So certainly.
Let me talk about Dover for a minute. I think one of the things that, you know, I've said before is the fact that unlike a lot of facilities where the public has an interest in how things work, whether it be this building, the library, things like that, you know, a police station, even like the Public Works building, the public doesn't have that much interaction with what happens in there. So to kind of answer Rick's question, I mean, a tour of Dover would be fine, but Dover is different than Portsmouth. I mean, you know, one of the things that, and Councilor Cook and I have both been through, and the police chief and deputy police chief have been through Dover twice, and Peter also. So one of the things about Dover is that they're 3 miles from Stratford County Sheriff's Office and the Stratford County Jail. So they can lean on Stratford County to provide services in conjunction with them that makes it easier for them. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned is that, yes, Dover has found that they need more space now. One of the things that they're having a real issue with is not so much functional space, but it's storage space. They have no storage space in that building. They took an area that was originally left open, and that's where the social workers are all located now. They're storing things under all the stairways up there. So, I mean, those are the types of things that don't get planned in. You plan in for your functional spaces, but what we're hearing from them is that one of the problems is they didn't plan for the non-functional spaces like storage. The other thing with Dover is similar to what we dealt with 30 some odd years ago. You know, we went from, you know, Penhallow Street to this, and everybody said, look at all of this space. There's restrooms here. there's rooms to meet, there's stuff like that. It felt great then. Dover went from, 8,000 square feet, and anything would have been better. And plus the fact is that they had the opportunity at that point in time. They were building a parking garage, so they were able to put those two pieces together. If they were building a standalone police station or a different police station, would they have configured it differently? I'm sure they probably would have, because they built it kind of around a parking garage. So I think that my feeling is that when we deal with things like Dover, we need to lean on the police chief and the staff to tell us things, how Dover works and what things there wouldn't work in Portsmouth, because I have no idea what that is. So again, was it beneficial to go on the tour of Dover? Yes. Did I come away with any answers? Probably not. So, thank you.
I think Rick's comment about planning department doing the master plan and looking at the growth in Portsmouth, because we've seen enormous growth just in the past 3 years. And it's down Route 1 and it's out towards the mall. And I know there's an elephant in the room, so I'll wake up that elephant and ask the police chief and the deputy police chief, do you think this is the right location when we're seeing growth in other areas of Portsmouth and you're not seeing growth here? Can I ask that
Second there.
question?
Actually, that's not our charge as a committee.
No,
So you
but-
can ask the question, but it's irrelevant to what we decide as a committee, because the city council has tasked us with this.
Right, but as we
space.
look at the configuration of the building and a new design group coming in, I mean, that seems to me, if we're talking about a 30, 40, 50-year,
We are not talking about moving at this stage. I'm sorry. That was,
decision was made.
the council made that
okay,
decision.
I'll quiet the elephant down.
All right. I mean, yeah, that's unfortunately
I'm
not
just
our
talking
council.
about this master plan, and if we're looking at the long-range picture
Well,
of Portsmouth.
that question will come up in master plan discussions with the police department in terms of a substation possibility. Those
Yeah.
questions will be asked.
Yeah.
Not as part of this committee. This
Right.
committee's charge
Right.
is different, but those questions will be asked.
Well, good.
Again, knowing how the process work, that will be that information from the planning staff and planning board will be taken into consideration by the consultant. I mean, that's what they do. They look at all of the things that can impact it, and they will garner that information and take it into consideration.
Are there other reflections on the Dover tour?
I've been through Dover several times. Talking to Rick about it. I think the benefit of taking the tour is not necessarily to look at the layout, but just to get a vision of what modern space looks like, and comparative to what we have right now. To the way Dover's layout probably is not. It's not in the best interest of how we would work our police department, but it still gives you a modern feel. Like when you walk into the lobby, you got all the point of contacts right
Yeah,
there.
that was nice.
You have the training room and community room right off of the, those things are relative to how we want to lay out. There are things that I know we do differently than what they did. But again, it's all in accommodations of the space that they had, the money they had available. Same thing for us. Kind of answering Mary Lou's about before we got to the building committee, when we had our group looking at locations and stuff. We've went through all that locations, and obviously we found locations, but a standalone building costs a lot of money.
Yeah, analyze
So,
the whole thing.
So we went back to the drawing board and we got to where we are out here, having it here. We felt that what we came up with provided the best bang for our buck and provided us with the things that we need to get us through the next, hopefully, 20, 30 years in a facility. And we conceded, you know, the location and, you know, staying in with some of our current space to accomplish that goal. You know, and unfortunately, the view outweighed that, so this is where we're at.
The good news is that we hadn't looked at the rest of the building, that the police hadn't been in as an opportunity.
Right.
So
It's true.
that's the positive here, is that
Yes, it is.
we have that opportunity to look at other space that
Yes.
maybe we hadn't considered.
Just one thing, Madam Chair, that RFP is on the Blue Ribbon Committee page. It's the second bullet down in the resources.
Thank you, Chief. I was gonna say a few things about Dover, because I've been to Dover twice now. I think that what's striking to me is, you know, the point of comparison on same functions, being able to look at, you know, I'll use our lab space again, because I was talking about it before. Our lab space versus their lab space, being to look at our evidence storage versus their evidence storage, and see kind of just the real deficiencies that we have here based upon what that modern space really looks like. I know that their space is not ideal. I mean, they made some compromises. Unfortunately, we're in the position, because we're in an older building, we're gonna make some compromises as well. And the police department has done a very good job thinking about what those look like by trying to figure out how to make it work here already. So by having more space to look at, maybe then we're in a better place in not having to make quite as many compromises, which I think would be very positive. And maybe putting us in a better situation to reutilize space that isn't ideal for office or workspace, you know, as storage or as, you know, as something else for on the municipal side. Also, seeing the municipal building in Dover was fascinating, because we got to see the old police space, which was really, I mean, it was absolutely clear.
About the size of this office, right?
Yeah, they absolutely needed a new space. There was no question about that. It's like walking back into the 1930s in a police space. But also seeing kind of the way that their city hall functions, I think was interesting as well, because all the point of contact is on the first floor. Like, or really, it's not even first floor. I think it's basement floor on one side. You come in and you go through all your services. There's no reason for anybody to go upstairs in the building unless they're attending a meeting. And so I found that really intriguing. And the way they organized it, it made me think very differently about this building and about things like City Hall chambers and this room. You know, maybe these spaces don't have to be what they currently are as far as function. And that also frees up some other space, and we can think about, you know, maybe we have a different council chamber somewhere else. Maybe that's less expensive to build than some other things. So when you're thinking about, you know, building additional space, maybe the additional space you're building is not police space, but maybe it's a large auditorium or something that might be more cost efficient to build. Yes. So I think that there's positive there, because some of these spaces could even be reutilized and looking at the Dover space. So
Building on that, Madam Chair, I think that harks back to Rick, your earlier comment, and what I tried to allude to in my earlier comment of what is our charter here and what are we here to accomplish? And we're here to accomplish understanding how do we make this the safest, most optimal workplace for all of our municipal employees that work on this campus, whomever they may be, whichever departments are here in perpetuity, whatever that looks like. And as we talked about earlier, I think, you know, things like touring Dover, to your point, Chief, it does help us understand what a modern workspace looks like, because what you all have is clearly not that. And from, if nothing else, a competitiveness standpoint, there are a whole host of, you know, municipal roles that I know we struggle to hire for, not the least of which are in your department, and having spaces that are not modern for people to come to work could potentially be frictional in our ability to hire people. So let's give ourselves a chance to be a competitive community in every way that we can.
Other thoughts?
I want to make one other comment, not on this, that we talked about the minutes of the meeting coming out. I don't know who did the minutes for the last meeting. Congratulations, you did a great job. And we got them before the next meeting. And it was very beneficial. Nice job.
Agreed.
Yes.
We need to include that comment in the minutes. And Peter often attaboy.
Any other reflections? Is there any public comment? Come on up.
Bob Korash, Haven Road, Portsmouth. My impression from listening to the discussion today is that there's a frustration of how we're moving forward and at what pace, and why does it take so long to get this report or the other. And I can share that. I mean, I have a copy of the 2015, 10 years ago report. So yes, it takes a long time, but 10 years seems to be a long time, and are we looking for another 10 years of discussion, or can we somehow, move things forward, which I think is a shared common, goal. And I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but I do have a basic question. Does anybody know if there is in existence now a structural plan of the existing police station building? In other words, where the major columns are, things that we can't change?
Yes.
We do have
a
that.
full set of drawings of the building, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I was going to say, if we didn't, then that's something which, we could do now. So I think the next step, I gather, is the evaluation of police department needs. Is that correct? And then what's the step after that? Is it going to be hiring an architect / engineer to give a proposal as to how the existing station should be reconfigured, or in addition to that, whether it's a bump out in the front or the back, or taking over some of the other municipal space that currently exists? Is that the program going forward?
Yeah, we've actually advertised for that service, and we've done the interviews, and we're in the selection process of that firm.
Okay, and that's different from the police station evaluation needs, which will be hopefully in June 11th or the 18th.
Yes.
When do we have a tentative date as to when the selection process will be completed for that next phase, and also how long that next phase will take?
So the next, I should say that I think it's important, and this is important for the committee to note, that if we sign a contract sometime in 2 to 3 weeks with an architectural firm, the earliest we will probably start meeting with them would be July, I would think would be an initial meeting. Just because we'll get through another report in June. It probably will take at least 2 meetings. And then we'll start meeting with them. They're not going to just come up with a report that says we need to do X, Y, and Z. They're going to meet with this committee, do public outreach, meet with other stakeholders in the city, so that they have a good idea and have all the input that they feel that they need before they come back to us with a report. So that, at a minimum, is probably a 4-month process. At least, am I being?
You're being
I might be optimistic. Yes.
So a project of this magnitude, typically, say we started today, all in, it'd be easily a year and a half of design to get to bid. So and that depends on how much public input there occurs and how much acceptance and, you know, but that's saying, go, now. So it's a long process.
No, I'm just curious as to what the estimate is as to when the committee will have enough information to make a proposal to the city council.
It will probably not be until late winter next
Yeah,
year at the
I would say
earliest.
6 months at a minimum.
Right, thank you.
And then
It'll be
that's,
the next city council.
yes,
Well,
so then that, and then that guidance will hopefully feed into the next budget, that budget process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Are there any other concerns
Will we adjourn?
Second.
before we adjourn?
Is everybody on Zoom?
I don't think
There is nobody on Zoom.
Nobody on Zoom, yeah,
There was for a short while, but
they're gone.
they're gone.
Okay. All right, so I
All
have a
in
motion to
favor?
adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank
I
you.
will see you all on the
Madam Chair.
11th.